You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out. You know, I appreciate you very, very much. On this episode, we are talking to my dude, Markus Reeves. Markus has been on the podcast before. He has a company called Reeves Electro. And the reason that his products have caught mine and a lot of other folks' eyeballs is, well, the craftsmanship. They're beautiful. They're insanely gorgeous. Yes, they work. Yes, they sound fantastic. Yes, they're well made. But really, it's the guts of these things that everybody appreciates so much. It's true point-to-point art, and everybody that sees them absolutely loves them. So I love Markus's craftsmanship. I love his attention to detail. I love his aesthetic, and I really enjoy talking to the dude. So he is back this week to talk about a very special promotion that he has going, but we also just get into music and whatnot, and we nerd out just like we did on the first episode. But if you want to know the full backstory, you should go back to the first time Markus came on the podcast, because there's a lot of information there that I think you may want to know. But you don't necessarily have to. You could enjoy this as a standalone episode, and if that's the case, well, you're already here. Let's get into it. But before I do, just a quick bit of housekeeping, because that's one of the things we got to do around here. Just don't forget, if you really like this show, please share it with a friend, throw it a 5-star, review it, leave a comment. I know engaging with a podcast can be a rather passive experience at times. I know I enjoy a lot of podcasts rather passively myself, but what I try to do once in a while is go in there and engage with them actively, because that's what these platforms like to see. They like to see people going in there and actively reviewing the shows and all that jazz. So if you could do that, I would really, truly appreciate it. That'll help with a lot of initiatives coming up. So please, if you like this podcast, go in and throw it a 5-star on whatever platform you listen to this on. I would really appreciate it. It would help me out immensely, especially right now. So thank you very much to everybody that's done that. And without further ado, let's get into this episode with Markus Reeves. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have returning Mr. Markus Reeves from Reeves Electro. What is happening, man?
Blake, thank you for asking me on. What's happening? Everything's happening at the moment, mate.
Everything's happening.
It's all good. Yeah.
So much has happened since last time you were on, and so much is about to happen, which is why we wanted to hop on and talk about it. But I mean, if my memory is correct, last time we talked, it was probably 2-ish years ago, somewhere in that ballpark.
I would think so. Yeah, time flies.
Yeah. And at that point, Reeves Electro had become a thing that was supporting you full time, but it was still growing. And now it is also supporting you full time and still growing, but it's just kind of maintained that trajectory. So what has happened since last we spoke?
Well, I mean, basically, it's also supporting my daughter full time as well now. So
wow.
she's joined us or joined me. It's gone from me to we. You know, I took a big decision when I first started out. I was like, no, I'm determined to be, you know, on my website. There's a lot of pedal builders say we when it's just me, you know, that kind of, you know, making yourself want to be bigger than you are. And I understand that, but I was like, no, I just want to be me. And now I have to go through the website and change everything, which was a bit annoying when Isabel came on board. But so she got her own range of pedals, which I've worked on the circuit. She's not fully circuit literate at the moment. She's not a circuit nerd,
right?
And but she's kind of sat with me when I voiced them, and she's done all the artwork for them and had an input on how we lay out the circuit boards, because the circuit boards are very aesthetically pleasing as well. And she just builds them at home now. You know, comes here and screen prints them, does all the enclosures, and then just does all this. She'd taken to soldering like, well, annoyingly fast, to be honest. It took me decades to get the hang of it. So that's cool. That's one thing. Obviously, for me, my side of things, has just got busier. The Instagram is growing, which is my kind of primary point of putting things out there, really. Last time we spoke, I think my Instagram probably had 4,000 or 5,000 followers. I'm just about to crest 18,000 now.
That's tremendous.
And it's going up faster and faster, actually. I seem to have found a little formula with Instagram, which I'm at peace with, because sometimes social media, you have to be a bit of you kind of have to sell yourself out a little bit to get people's attention, to make your channels grow and things. But I've managed to find a formula that I like, as far as sort of, to look at and to listen to and to see, and it seems to grow the channel. So that's cool.
That is cool.
I've got to the point where this workshop is too small. It literally, when I start one task, I have to clear a space, because just all the workshops are starting to get full up, and I'll move something somewhere to do one job. I have to move that stuff back to do the next job, in the space where I've moved the stuff to. So it slows things down. And I'm determined not to, because I work, the workshop is in our garden. Okay. And I'm determined to not let it encroach in the house, in our personal lives, because I'm sure you're have a very similar feeling to that. When you go to the shred, that's where work is. So we're moving workshop, and we're actually moving house as well. And the workshop is actually in the garden there.
Oh wow! So you're moving life.
Yeah, absolutely. Only a couple of miles down the road, but absolutely. Bigger house. Well, not much bigger actually. Just a slightly bigger garden and a bigger workshop was pretty much the deal breaker. And the workshop itself is fairly run down, and obviously the logistics of moving a business like this that's so hands-on is, and there's no spare bodies to continue. Some bigger businesses also will pull out a couple of people and say, right, you're in charge of the move while production carries on. If I'm in charge of the move, no production carries on, because I'm, that's it. So it's a tough one, really. That's the thing that we've briefly spoke about this before I came on, but basically, I kind of went through lots and lots of ideas about how we're going to do this, and all of them were very slow because it was about cash flow, So I'm going to do a crowdfund, basically.
Okay.
Well, kind of a crowdfund. I'm going to do. I used to do waitlist Wednesdays, where people would be able to order on a Wednesday. Everything would be up, unlimited numbers, and they could order for 24 hours and get what you want, rather than it be me drop 10 at a time, which I normally do. And I thought, I could do one of those. I could do that again, because that obviously raises quite a lot of money towards the and towards actually redoing the workshop. And it kind of grew, and that was the idea. And then Sarah, she suggested, well, why don't I do some sort of perks that go along with that, like a crowdfunder. So we're going to do builder pedal days. limited places, but you can come to the workshop when it's finished and build a fuzz pedal with me. Not a point
that's
to point
super
one,
cool.
but one like the tour grade version.
Oh yeah,
So
beautiful.
Something very, very similar to that.
For the audio listeners, it's just
apologies. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the full point to point, but there's elements of it. Along
absolutely.
with turret strips and everything.
Yeah, still no PCB. And things like the 30-minute Zoom sessions. If people want if they just want to sit and talk about cats, they're more than welcome to. But there's lots of subjects. I can do a soldering health check. We can look at maybe if you've got a pedal that you're building, you've got a problem with, maybe see if we can troubleshoot that. Things like that. Excuse me. Also a time lapse. If you go for the time lapse of your pedal being built. You get that in a personal message, and also the point at which I actually fire it up for the first time, and just check it basically. So you'll get that kind of personal thing, and also you can sponsor a Monday Minute. So I do a Monday Minute every Monday, and just chip in and just get your name. Like a lot of podcasts do. You get your name read out on the thing. We're gonna do that. So there's something in return for it, really. But just the whole plan was just rather than I'm waffling a bit now, but so apologies. But the whole plan was initially going to take me sort of 4 or 5 months to get the workshop into kind of working order. And that was too long. That was just going to be too disruptive. So this way, what will happen is there'll be a lot of work. I've got a friend of mine who's a builder who's going to come and help me. We're going to come and do it in the space of 3-4 weeks, get it all done and dusted, and then hit the road running. So that's the plan.
That's going to be an intensive process. You're going to be a very tired, busy man here in the next few. What is it? It's starting. So you're starting the crowdfund, if I remember correctly, in the beginning of April, which is
April the 17th. Yeah, it will just be one day, 24 hours. But obviously, I'm going to start talking about it early April. Now as this goes out, the actual date at the moment is going to be April the 17th.
Got it.
There's a couple of caveats to that. Obviously, with buying a house, we've kind of put a little bit of leeway in there. But if anything does, because we haven't actually signed anything yet, it's all going through. Everybody's happy. There's no, but you never know, do you? So, the only caveat is that if it isn't likely or it hasn't happened by the 17th, I may email everybody and just say, it's moved back a week or a couple of weeks. But we're aiming for the 17th.
Right.
24 hours. People can come to the website. Whatever they've got their eye on, they can pre-order. Obviously, the fulfillment of that will be a little bit further down the line. As with the waitlist Wednesdays, it was sort of up to 2-3 months. But again, that'll be made clear, and I keep people in the loop as to how things are going. You can follow the Instagram and see your pedal getting built. That's what's happening.
I can kind of relate to a lot of this because there's especially kind of midway through last year, we actually really considered moving ourselves. I'd like to get out into a more rural area where I can have a proper shop to work on my cars and things like that.
Oh, cool. And,
and also this, but the big wrench in the gears was actually trying to figure out another shred shed. Because this is where I work, and work has to happen every day. So it was kind of a weird, it was a weird thing to have to consider. Like, I have to build another studio. So how are we gonna do that? and remodel a house or build a house or
Yeah.
whatever we were going to do. So it kind of got delayed there while I'm like, this is logistically a lot more challenging than I was initially thinking of. And this is just one guy doing content stuff, not trying to move production, which is a completely different subject that I've also been talking about, because in the next probably two-ish years, we're gonna have to move this. We're gonna have to move the String Joy shop, and that's gonna be a nightmare. Yeah, a nightmare.
There's some big old machines as well, aren't they?
Oh yeah. It's they're all like the size of a car, basically. Yeah, and
so String Joy's doing well.
Yeah, it's going really, really well. And it's just some of the things you don't think about as an employee when you're at a place, but like we're trying to find. And again, it could work out to where if somebody moves out of the space adjacent to us, we could knock a hole in the wall and we'd be good.
I actually worked at a printer's. Oh crikey! Back in the day, I'm not saying when it was, but that exact thing happened. The neighbours moved out and they just pushed through. They were literally talking about moving for months.
That would be amazing if that happens. I don't know that it will though. So it's but it is one of the things that you don't really think about as an employee, or I certainly didn't think about as an employee. It was parking. Like, yeah, we might find the perfect facility operationally, but there's not enough parking for all the people, because there's a lot of labor involved there. So there's a lot of hands, and they all, it's the United States, so everybody drives.
Yeah, it's the same across the world, to be honest. Yeah. But your cars are a bit bigger.
Typically, actually, I think it's mostly reasonable cars at the place.
At least that's kind of changing a little bit these days. But I remember I went to see. Who did I go to see? There was an American guy, Canadian thing, big unit, blues player, big guy.
Kingfish, maybe?
No, Anderson. Anyway, he it was his first time over in the UK, and he'd kind of gone to get a rental car, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll get." He just went down the list and went, "Oh yeah, I'll get a medium sized." He figured that'd be fine. In the States, medium sized, there'd be plenty of room for his unit. So he got to the rental place, and he's like, English medium size is quite a lot smaller than American. And he was stuck in it.
Yeah.
So
I'm short, so like a Mini Cooper's fine with me. I don't.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah. I fit in there
as well.
Yeah. I mean, width is a little bit challenging sometimes, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. The Mini Coopers though, you see them next to the original Minis.
Oh, it's crazy,
and it's like it's a dwarf and a giant. The difference is more like a normal saloon in the UK these days. The Minis than the little Minis were.
Oh, the little ones are they're like go-karts.
Madness how small they are. Yeah.
My wife really wants one. She wants, if I ever get to work on cars again, that's what she wants for her cool car. She wants a Mini Cooper.
Sweet.
Which would be a fun build and quite different than what I'm used to working on.
What's
muscle cars and stuff.
What's your kind of what's your thing with the cars then? Is it rods or?
I like muscle cars.
Muscle cars. Okay.
Yeah. I grew up with working on muscle cars. I have a 69 Camaro that my dad and I built.
Do you know what? The SS, Camaro's, I'm a bit of a muscle car fan as well. So, that's kind of my... That when someone says a muscle car, that's what I'll see, is a Camaro. I'm not... I love a Shelby, but, they're left field from
they're a little sport... They're more of a sports car, kind of, but... With a big, ridiculous V8. I mean,
yes. Yeah. But those SS Camaros, any of the Camaros, they just don't age, do they? Especially from that era. You see
the 67 through 69. It's like they just nailed that look to me. Yeah. I feel really, really fortunate because
Yeah.
I've had, been asked before, like, if you could have any car in the world, what would you have? I'm like, I have it, actually. That's the car I would pick.
Yeah.
I love it. Is it the fastest car? No, but it's fast enough.
Does it go around corners?
Good sideways. But it's you start it, you turn the key, and it makes you smile. It's like,
hell yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's.
That shape in the UK in the 70s and 80s really was pretty much copied. We had a car called the Ford Capri, which was that whole fastback thing. In a big sort of touring saloon as well. So very iconic shape. Yeah.
But yeah, on the other hand, I do love a classic Mini Cooper, which is a completely different thing. But still, anything that you walk away from, you get out of the car, you close it, lock it, and you start walking into the store or wherever you're at, and you turn around, you look, and you're like, yeah. Anything that does that.
It's just good design, isn't it? Really, you can appreciate just because it's not the same kind of format. If it's nicely designed, it's pleasing to look at, and like you say, it gives you that inner smile. Then job's done, isn't it?
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Markus Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Markus is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations in 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services, and it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. Well, I mean, that relates actually directly to what you do. I think people first were drawn to your work because of the point-to-point stuff, but you've carried that over into everything, not exactly point-to-point per se, but in like the tour grade designs, it still maintains those aesthetics. Yeah. You're very aware of making the insides pretty because that's what your audience has come to expect. Has it been difficult to maintain those standards while moving to different styles of builds?
No, honestly, I don't find it. I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin and his kind of philosophies, and he's always one of the big things he talks about is never make your art for your audience. Make it for yourself. Okay, because if you're lucky enough that an audience is attracted to what you like, you're never going to have to second guess your next move. Okay, because you just do what you like, and that's it. You don't have to doubt yourself. Whereas if you're kind of making stuff for your audience, you always have to think, what are they going to like? What should I do next to please these people? And you don't really know. You're just guessing. So I'm very much of the mind of that's cool. I'm going to make that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's literally all I do. I'm absolutely blessed, that people seem to, dig what I do as well. So I think as long as I carry on doing that, I don't find it at all difficult. It's the only difficulty really for me is there's just so many things I want to do. There's so many ideas that I get. The way my brain works is just kind of like, it's side quests all the time, everywhere. And I just, so many like projects that are 3/4 of the way there. But they'll come out eventually. They will get there. Yeah.
So most of your stuff has been, I guess it's some sort of gain-based thing as far as players think of things.
Yeah.
Drive, fuzz, boosts, things of that nature. But I imagine there's always something else rolling around in there. Have you toyed with modulation, or what are your thoughts there?
Maybe a trem. Nothing. I mean, there's nothing that I've sort of breadboarded it, to be honest. But I've never used a lot of modulation, to be honest. I love a tremolo, harmonic tremolo. I'm getting into. I've got the jam pedals, Harmonious Monk, which is the one with that pedal show. That's a lovely pedal. That's about the only modulation I use. I'm not a fan of chorus. Chorus is kind of my kryptonite, if you like. I'm just it's too pretty.
Too pretty.
Yeah. Just too pretty. I'm not. No. So yeah, probably just drive. Just different flavors of drive. There is such a wide variety. It's like a red wine. I always say, drive and fuzz, especially fuzz and drives. They're like red wines. It's just on the surface. If you just kind of look over the precipice, it's kind of all the same. But actually, when you get down there and dirty, and you suddenly realise that it is just never ending. I've recently picked up. Oh, it hasn't arrived yet, actually. But there's a circuit that I've been looking to get hold of. It's the Maestro FZ1B, which is a silicon.
Oh,
yeah. And there's two versions of that. There's a two transistor version. There's a 4 transistor version. Now I've heard the 2 transistor version, and it's not. There's nothing about it that really gets me going. But the 4 transistor version is quite a thing, and they're super rare, not particularly sought after. People confuse those terms sometimes. Rare is not necessarily sought after.
They might be rare because they weren't initially sought after.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got one coming in. I found one on Reverb a couple of days ago. It's on its way in, and that's a circuit that I'm really interested in. And the Gibson schematic on the back of the lid. Okay, it's got names for all the transistors. It's got input gain stage, impedance match stage, fuzz stage, and squelch.
Squelch.
It actually says on the schematic, drawn up by some guy in 1962, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. Squelch. Actually, they've named a transistor Squelch, so I'm like, I've got to buy it.
Got to see what that is.
Yeah.
Squelch always reminds me of over here, like CB radios. My grandpa's truck.
Oh yes. It's a control on the CB radio, isn't it? Yeah.
But I've never known what it actually does. I know it makes it sound different, but I don't actually know what a squelch control on a CB radio does. No, I hadn't really thought about it until just now. I never did figure out what that control means. I wonder if it's a frequency, not like radio frequency, because obviously you can adjust that. But like, I wonder
maybe
if
it's like a Q curve or something.
Yeah, because it does. You can hear it, and I wonder if why I brought it up is I wonder if this is it going to do something similar in this
maybe
fuzz
it's
circuit?
an actual a bona fide electronic term.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll find out. I'll let you know. Watch this space.
We'll find out what squelch means.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that coming in. So and it'd be interesting to find out exactly what that sounds like. And it's the first. Gibson have recently reintroduced the Maestro range with the graphics. The really retro graphics. This is the first pedal that had those those multicolored horns on it, that kind of that layout. So that'd be cool.
Oh, I do have one. One of the newer ones. This look. Yeah.
Yes, that kind of look. Yeah. So the little part at the bottom, that's an echo of that. So yeah, looking forward to that and getting to grips with what that can do. I've got a feeling that it's going to sound a little bit like the intro to the Stooges' "I Want to Be Your Dog."
We can only hope, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that squelch control, that kind of makes me that's the sound I've got in my head. So there we go. Yeah, but I might have to put that on the outside of the pedal. This knob is the squelch.
This is the squelch. Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit here. We can only hope that our children sometime, maybe eventually at some point share some of our interests in music, or even better, what we do on a daily basis. That's even cooler. But oftentimes that's not the case. So how did your daughter gain an interest in building pedals? That's a pretty unique thing. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. She would spend a lot of time here anyway, and generally, as I got busier, she would kind of gravitate towards the workshop, and I'd end up giving her batches of transistors to grade. Okay, so literally, a transistor has you can equate it almost to cubic capacity of an engine. Okay, and they vary. Okay, across you buy a batch of transistors, and they vary a little bit. So you have a figure called a HFE, and it's the amount of gain there is in the transistor, and you need to test them. Get that. That's the first sort of stage of testing transistors. So you can put them all in a row and say, right, these are in this particular bracket. So she was testing them, and it's a very, very long-winded and boring job. It's a day's worth of just plugging 3 legs into a socket, pressing a button, waiting 15 seconds, finding out what the number is, and putting it in a little box in that number. And she found it really relaxing. And I'm like, "You've got a job for life, my dear." And then I started getting her to test other components as well. So capacitors. I check all the components for tolerance. She started to understand it, and it literally was just an organic thing. And one day we just said, "Do you want to try a pedal?" So I bought her a kit from my good friend Lee at Fuzz, who supplied the British King of Fuzz with with one of my Super J's actually, and I said, let's have a go at putting this together, and literally, I think I had an old board. I said, just try putting some solder in that and filling the holes up before we put any components in. And she just went ding, 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 what, like that? And I was speechless. She soldered at school, and she burnt herself on her arm when she was at school. At the
It's
age
a rite of passage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at the age of sort of, I don't know, 12, 13. Fast forward 10 years, and she literally picked the soldering iron up, got this old blank board, just filled all the holes up with solder and went like that. And I'm like, would you? Yeah, it took me decades to work out how to do that. Decades. And you've just literally done it. And she said, well, yeah, I know, but you've worked out all the solder and the soldering iron and all that. And I'm like, still, no, really. You can start making pedals tomorrow, you know. So I gave her the kit, and I said, look, you just try and work it out yourself. Not to be cruel, just because you can only learn by skinning your knees, to be honest.
True.
So, and she did a pretty good job of it. She got a bit unstuck with the circuit board. She did fine, unbelievably well. Wiring that into the enclosure, she was a bit like, lost the track here, and that's understandable because that you go into any forum, and the big question is always somebody, I've built the circuit and it sounds fine in bypass. As soon as I hit the button, nothing. You know,
Right.
It's always off. It's always going to be. It's always off-board wiring where people have the problem. So she just took to it so naturally, and it was just one little step at a time. And eventually, we got to the point where we said, "Well, you should make pedals. Make your own pedals." You know, she was working. She enjoyed a previous job, working on a farm. Not labouring, but working it was quite a big commercial farm, working in the offices. But it wasn't going anywhere, and she wasn't in a position to move out. She lived with her mum. We'd separated years ago, and she wasn't in a position, to get any independence really financially. And she moved out about 3 or 4 months ago. No, about 6 months. Blimey, 6 months ago now. And she's absolutely loving life. You know,
That's great.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think there's anything that makes me happier to be able to offer. Because this is what we do. We work to provide for our family, don't we? That's
100%.
That's absolutely what we do this for, and to have that, writ large every day when I see Izzy is it's very, very heartwarming, and I wake up and pinch myself every day, just because it's amazing. So welling up a bit actually, but there we go.
I mean, it is a wonderful thing, and it's not something that I really thought it would ever happen. As a younger, in my 20s and things, you grow up and the attitude is, find something to do that you can tolerate, or that you maybe don't hate as much as the last job that you had.
Yes.
But it wasn't really spoken about, I feel like, until maybe the last 15 years or so, of like, hey, if you're making a ton of money doing something you hate, is it really worth it? Or can you make less and find something? And it doesn't always have to be less, but oftentimes it is when you're talking about artistic endeavors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you make less and have that experience of like, oh, I can't believe I get to do this instead? Because I certainly would have been better served financially staying in the oil industry. But I didn't. I really, really didn't like it.
No.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I try and do some every now and again. I post up some kind of some of my thoughts about various things, and there's this meme. I'm showing my age now, calling them memes. But there's this kind of thing goes around that's we don't we're not born to pay bills and die, and it's really easy to say that, but it's actually not easy to break out of that kind of that thing that it's the way society's set up, it's the way life is set up, you know. So every time I kind of see something like that online, it does remind me how lucky I am, you know. But at the same point, I guess, looking at it from the yin to my yang sort of thing, I've always been the sort of person that doesn't miss an opportunity. You know, when it's come along, you grab it. You know, and it's the whole red car thing, isn't it? Where if you say to somebody, make a note of all the red cars that you see tomorrow, and you'll see millions, not millions, but you'll see hundreds of red cars, and then you say about blue cars the next day, and they'll see hundreds of blue cars. It's the same with opportunity. If you're not looking for them, they'll just go past unnoticed. I guess it was a perfect storm as well with COVID, and you know, being offered redundancy at where I was working before, and you know, all those sort of things came in to add up to whatever it is I do now, you know.
Did you think prior to that? Did you think? I know you were curious. Oh, I want to build some pedals, but did you really think that it was going to be what it is now?
Absolutely not. No,
yeah.
No. It was a side hustle to get me through the pandemic, to be honest. You know, and because I've been doing it since the 90s, on and off, mucking around with making pedals and scratching a living. You know, from trying not scratching a living, scratching a bit of pocket money, and just before, probably a couple of years before the pandemic, I started to think, do you know what, I really should do something with this. You know, I'm going to curse. Sorry, I'm piss or get off the pot. Is a phrase in the UK. I don't know whether that's something that's in the States, but basically just get on with it or give up, you know. And so I'd got the website set up, and I'd got a few bits and pieces. I got a few pedals kind of built, and it was ticking away. And I'd get maybe a sale every 6 weeks or so, you know. And it was like that for probably a year, you know. And I thought, well, that's, you know, that'll do. That's fine. You know, I can do that. You know, at weekends. And then the pandemic came along, and you know, everything just stopped and exploded at the same time. You know,
right?
Everything went in every direction. Nobody knew what was going on. You know, commercially, you didn't know what was going on. Socially, you didn't know what was going on. Financially, you didn't. Everybody was just frozen. Brian Wampler it literally was the seed of all of this. He posted, I think it was a post on Instagram. He said something, he made a comment on my Instagram, and I posted it back up I screenshotted it. I was like because I'm a bit of a Brian fanboy, to be honest. I posted it up in a Facebook group, saying, "Oh, look, you know, look what Brian Wampler said about my pedal." In a DIY pedal group somewhere. And Dan from that pedal show saw that post, and literally that messaged me the minute he saw it and said, "Send me one of these." That was it. That was literally it. They featured it, and we were driving on vacation to a little cottage we'd hired, and my phone just kept going ba-ding, 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 all the way there. And when I got there was just hundreds of orders on the website. Literally, I'm not joking. I went from 1 or 2 every 6 weeks to 3 figures in a space of 3 hours.
That had to have been really exciting, but also like,
I myself,
I need to go back home now.
yeah. It was I say that, but because the pandemic was in full swing, I had the time because I was furloughed off work. So I did actually have the time to start going, right, okay, let's get on with these. PayPal didn't help. Froze my account because suddenly there was this massive spike in turnover, and
they sure do that. Oh boy.
Oh, absolutely. I dropped them as soon as I got to the point where they said I used them for a couple of years, and then probably about 18 months, and they put a rolling 3 months hold on your account. So the money goes in, and they hold it, and then release 90 days later. And I said to them, right, all the conditions that you put on at the beginning, I've met. Can you release this hold? And they were like, oh, well, we'll let you have 30% of your money straight away. And I said, you can do one, PayPal. Sorry. Took it straight off the website.
Well, it's really unfortunate because so many, especially gear people, use PayPal kind of as their sort of like their slush fund. Like they'll buy and sell and just keep it all in PayPal.
I know plenty of guys that do that. Yeah.
Which I understand. It helps you keep your finances kind of separate so you're not overspending, PayPal, it's a double-edged sword because like they from a business perspective, you want to be able to accept that money from people who have reserved those funds to do fun gear things with.
It's a thing,
But if they're holding things for 90 days, I mean, we don't even give 90-day terms to big retailers.
No.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, we don't do terms typically at all, but let alone we've been asked for 90 before, and it was like, we're not your bank.
Yeah.
Like,
that's what I said to them. I mean, and I just thought it's rude and it's arrogant, and I'm doing this because I moved out of the corporate environment, and I'm not going to entertain big corporate. If I can, then I'm going to drop them. And I know there's a lot of people that said, "Oh, that's a mistake," because, like you say, it's people. There's a lot of pedal buyers that will have a little fund in there, and they're like, "Oh, how much have I got? I've got my eye on this. That's X amount. I've got Y amount in my PayPal. I'm going to stick these 2 drive pedals up on Reverb, get the PayPal up, and then I can buy that." I know exactly that's what people do. But I'm just not prepared to line PayPal's pocket after being like that.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't realize, and I'm saying this as somebody who only kind of understands this, but in financial businesses like that, I learned this through insurance actually, but it's the same thing with PayPal. They have your money, and the longer they can hold on to it, the more they make off of it, because they don't just take your cash and sit on it. No. They take your cash and they invest it.
They gamble with it.
And they play around with it, and they try to make money on the money they hold. So the longer that they can hold on to your cash, the longer they get to potentially make money every single day on it. And so I know that some of this is done in the name of fraud protection, and I've had PayPal help me out with some fraud stuff before, and they were very good about it. But I've heard of so many people having this exact same thing happen where they freeze your account, and it's like that could be a death trap for a small business. Absolutely.
Luckily, the pedal community is so cool. I've got to say, I wasn't able to buy the stuff to make these pedals. So I had to email people and say, look, everybody that had ordered, I had to say, look, this is what PayPal have done. I'm trying to work through this, so I can buy your stuff, because It's just gone crazy. So anyway, that's a thing from the past, and I'm so lucky, so lucky, to have, I guess, learned those lessons when there wasn't too much at stake. Whereas, it has got to the point where it's become a lot more like logistical. With Izzy on board now. So yeah, the workshop thing, that's the future.
Yeah.
Moving from the past, I'm looking forward to having a space that is 3 times the size of this.
That'll be really nice.
Yeah.
Do you ever see yourself hiring anybody who isn't Izzy?
No, it's funny. I'm not like all the other businesses really, in that I don't see expansion necessarily as a goal, really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. I think what I want to have, the type of product that myself and Izzy make, are the type of product that have got a lot of us invested in it, and it's a very, very commercially unscalable concept, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't hand off what I do to somebody else and put the same. They're not buying the same thing. If somebody comes to me to buy a pedal, they want to buy it because I do a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to hand that off to somebody just doesn't seem right. So I guess the only way it would work like that would be that every builder within the company has their own style. Maybe that's the thing,
Mm-hmm.
That would be the only way that it would move forward. I can't build the pedals fast enough as it is. It works as as it is. So yeah, I don't know. I'll cross that bridge. That's question too hard.
I mean, it is an interesting concept, right? Because businesses, especially small businesses like yours, and most of the people I talk to, it isn't necessarily the big corporate thing of ever expanding, ever growing, ever increasing. Is it first of all, at some point everything has to start pulling back. The biggest companies in the world will eventually have to pull back because of natural forces or governmental forces or something.
Or things are always changing. Always.
Yep. Yeah, consumer tastes, whatever. Yeah. So the idea that can happen forever is kind of ridiculous. Yeah, but also, when you're talking about businesses, it's time to go.
Another interruption. I'm sorry. Yeah. My wife is quite insistent about this gig, so it sounds like
all right. Well, hey, let's hang it up. We'll pick this up another time here. We'll take a pause here, listeners. We're almost at the end of the main episode, so. We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the
Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Good Hertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblissaudio.com. I think you're gonna like what you find.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.
Markus, welcome back.
Yes.
We had, we're just going to pull back the curtains and let everybody see what's going on here. You had an unexpected gig, slightly miscalculated.
Yeah, it was not so much as unexpected as just me being terrible at timing, to be honest. I thought I had another hour. And then Sarah was banging on the door. We've got to go. Well, she came in.
She did. Mm-hmm.
And yes, we got there in plenty of time. But it would have been yes. So, it didn't go very well, regardless.
What kind of gig was it? What was happening?
It's just an acoustic gig. I was playing in a band pre-COVID, and that kind of went the way of a lot of bands did in COVID and kind of disappeared. Everybody kind of just got either despondent or, my drummer broke his leg, actually. God bless you, Mark. And he's not playing now. It was bad. It was a spiral fracture. And
oh, wow.
Really quite bad. Taking his bins out, he slipped dry. He literally just tripped, caught it wrongly, and it just...
No! Not even a cool story. Didn't even get a cool story out of it.
No, not even a motorbike involved, and he's what I would say is a lifer. He restores vintage drums. He's a session player. He lives and breathes drums, so he really struggled with that. Anyway, I digress. So I've just gone back after COVID to playing the occasional acoustic gig, and which I used to do a lot of, and I kind of went, to be absolutely honest, I went into last night a little bit overconfident. Literally,
I got this.
Started playing songs, and I'm like, "What's the first line?" And literally, it was like that all evening. I was like, just always trying to play catch up with it wasn't flowing, and I was thinking too hard about the songs for them to actually come out naturally. So, it was one of those gigs that it was just like, you're getting to the end of it, and that's all you really want to do is get through it. So, but it was, the crowd were still, pretty cool. They're all quite drunk, so it didn't really worry too much. Yeah.
Well, that helps. They won't remember then. It'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We freeze for a second. Yeah. I said they won't remember it. So it'll be fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, moving on.
Moving on swiftly.
Yes.
So was that your first? Wait, well, let's not move totally on. Was that your first gig back? Like, was that the first one?
No. I've played a few. We have in the UK. There's quite there's a little network of kind of folk clubs that I used to be quite heavily involved with, and not necessarily play. I don't play folk music, but they're very accepting crowds and they're quiet. There's listening crowds with acoustic. Sometimes you go and play cafes and bars and things like that, and everybody's chatting away, and it's fine. It's a social evening. It's a type of gig, but I do prefer to be able to play with the dynamics. Whereas when it's noisy and acoustic, you kind of have to keep playing loud. So and this was just a nice quiet little gig. So I haven't played that probably handful of gigs since lockdown was lifted, probably 7 or 8 maybe. Nothing
Okay.
major, don't have the time,
Right.
too busy.
It does take a lot of time.
Yeah, too busy working at the other end of the spectrum. Acoustic here and fuzz, loud, nasty, high watt cranking, pedals on the other end of the spectrum. So yeah.
So with that in mind, I don't think we've ever really talked about your musical taste. We talked about how your company came to be and all that, but
Yeah.
what kind of things do you listen to? What did you grow up listening to? What are you into?
Massively eclectic. My dad was a huge jazz and gospel fan, actually. Not particularly a man of faith, but he loved gospel music regardless. And there's something about the spirit that all the gospel records that he had were. I've still got quite a few of them actually. Were very, real true old school gospel where it's real heart, real energy. And lots of jazz as well. My mum she loved the Stones, Simon and Garfunkel, kind of classic 70s, 60s and 70s stuff. And I kind of grew up listening to sort of FM radio music. And then at the age of 12, I heard a band called The Jam, who are a kind of UK new wave, kind of mod punk kind of thing. And it changed my life.
Oh,
literally that day.
I remember this now from our first episode. It's coming back to me. I remember the Jam were massively important for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It still is. And the founder member, a guy called Paul Weller, has not stopped being creative and changing his and just changing through his career. He's been at it 50 odd years. 50 years. Oh, I don't even want to admit to that. And just he's really inspirational to me. I don't know whether you can hear the cat purring.
I can't hear him purring, but I see the tail pop up once in a while. There we go.
Yeah.
What's the cat's name? Woody. Hey, Woody.
Yeah.
How you doing?
We have Woody and his brother Buzz.
Nice. I like
and
that.
If we had another one, we'd probably call it Stinky Pete.
There you go. I like it.
Which is a Toy Story thing. If anybody doesn't get it, so he comes and sits when more in the winter because when the heater's on because the heater's right under my workbench. So he literally comes and sits on top of everything I'm doing because that's where it's warm. He doesn't like me.
That's right. He's just like it. Likes that it's warm.
Off you go, mate. There we go. Right. Yes. So and then that kind of the Paul Weller thing. He in his early career he wore his influences on his sleeve. So there was things like the Kinks, the Who, Small Faces, Humble Pie, and that kind of led me to listen to them. And then through the Small Faces, I discovered the Yardbirds, and then I discovered Jeff Beck. Then through Jeff Beck, I discovered Eric Clapton. Through Eric Clapton, I discovered, there we go. Then I discovered Jimi Hendrix. Through Jimi Hendrix, I discovered, and it just opened the whole world for me. So, yeah. And I became fascinated with music, really. And ever since then, I've just always been interested in, new music. And it doesn't seem to, some people, as they get older, they just kind of refer back to what they were listening to, and it's not as good as their first album, or it's not as good as the 70s or the whatever. But I'd still get excited by hearing new music and new bands. So and I'm glad about that. Yeah.
Who are you into these days? Who have you discovered recently?
There's a British band called Soft Play, who they had to change. They started out, their name was Slaves. And they're quite how can I put it? It's a lot of social commentary in their music, not particularly politic kind of thing, but there's a lot of social commentary. And their name was about them not wanting to be corporate slaves, but obviously it's a very loaded word, and they had to change their name to Soft Play. Anyway, they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I really like them. Idols.
Idols,
huge band called the Idols. They've been out for a while now. Another band called Soft Leg that I really like.
Soft Leg. Never heard of them.
Sorry, no, not Soft Leg. What I'm talking about, Wet Leg.
Wet Leg. Now, yes. I have heard of them from Richard, and I was like, interesting name.
Yeah, let's not go into it. It's put on the spot now. I should have written a list out. I'm really digging the Black Keys new album, although they're not a new band.
I actually have not gotten around to listen to it, but I'm a big fan of theirs, and I'm definitely going to.
They're slowly.
Love the Black Keys.
It's a really interesting release. The whole album is listed, but only a couple of tracks are live at the moment. And I think what they're doing is they're not releasing the album like fully until they'll drop another track off the album. They'll open that live and so on. It's really interesting how they're doing it. Obviously tied into data that comes off Spotify now, I suppose.
I imagine so. It's I have seen artists do that a little bit more recently, where they kind of drip feed the album out. Usually, though, it seems like they'll do like one single and maybe 2 to 3 more max, and then they drop the whole album. But it does look like they're gonna just drip the whole thing.
So the album's there and listed. It's just they're grayed out. Most of the tracks are grayed out. It's a really interesting concept, I think. So love the Black Keys. Literally from the first note I heard, I was mesmerized. So they're
I love Dan's approach to everything too. Like just like make. It's similar to Jack White, which they popped off in the same time period, but his is just always a little raunchier, a little gnarlier, a little more aggressive, which I'm into.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit less poppy, I think. Jack White is, and that's I'm not throwing shade. It's just two flavors of a similar kind of tonal palette, really, isn't it?
It's interesting how that can happen sometimes. In a few, I don't know, maybe it was 3-4 weeks ago on Chasing Tone, we were discussing the origins of like punk and metal and heavier music and how a lot of it comes from the UK. Yeah. And then we got a lot of messages in, and it was interesting, especially with punk rock, how different, at least it seems like around the same time, different cultures around the world all kind of developed some sort of punk rock sensibility, sort of independent of what was going on in other countries until, you know, because information travel.
Music.
Yeah. It just became, it was slower to travel, so it's really hard to know like who was first and who inspired who and who did what. But with punk especially, it's weird how all those scenes developed independently of each other, kind of coming to the same conclusion.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a chat with Richard Oliver after that episode, actually, because I think he was talking about the Kinks as well, and I sent him a link to a Kinks track which was released about 6 months before Iggy and the Stooges' first Raw Power album. And it's a track called Brainwashed by the Kinks. It's a really kind of underrated track, and there's 8 bars in the middle of that where Dave Davies is da-da, 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 and it is, for me, that feels like, so what, that 1968?
Yeah,
it feels like to me the birth of punk. Just those 8 bars. It's just sounds like something that Iggy went, I want to do that. You know, he probably didn't, but it feels like that. You know, definitely Brainwashed by the Kinks. Definitely worth checking out once you get a spare 5 minutes. The rest of the song is like Austin Powers on steroids. It's a real swinging 60s, like hip London kind of thing, but it's a great tune. But no, I get exactly what you mean about there seemed to be something in the ether around that time where everybody was getting angry about kind of everything, really. But
everything,
music, music was the kind of, I think was the expression of that. But yeah, there was definitely, I guess these things come in cycles, don't they? So,
when you think about it too, is, back in when the electric guitar was first invented, and certainly when it became more popular, it's always, the unfortunate reality is it's always been expensive. Like it always has. Now, relative to the cost of everything else, you can get better quality instruments at lower prices than you used to be able to. But I feel like when punk started popping off, that was the first time that like truly widespread availability of the electric guitar was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, when you think about it, the rise of transistor amps probably timed in with that.
Probably.
Because before then it was really just valve amps. I mean, there were transistor amps, but it was, manufacturing kind of shifted a little bit, didn't it? And numbers became a bigger thing where where they're making lots of the same thing, and so technology. It's the same thing, isn't it? Guitarists have kind of ridden on the wave of other technologies, or guitar gear.
Absolutely.
Has ridden on the wave of other technology. So as PCB production and pick and place component, becomes a thing because they want to make millions of televisions, then that bleeds over into guitar gear. Same with things like, transistors. They were made in their millions to make radios and heart monitors and medical equipment and blah blah blah, and we were just lucky that they make great fuzzes as well.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always I'll post once in a while in some form or another is Walter Brannan, who was one of the inventors of the transistor and seemingly a real tool. Brilliant, but really doesn't seem like he was a very nice man. From what I can, he didn't like, and he didn't like rock and roll. Yeah, he made a quote where he's like, "That's my only regret about inventing the transistor was rock and roll," or something like that. Which
absolutely. Well, I mean, you look at Link Ray Rumble.
So good.
But it was banned. It was
so
banned
crazy.
Banned for radio play because it was too. I think it was kind of just too salacious and too kind of. There was something about it that made people. I don't know.
There's not even any words in it. That's the crazy part.
No. But I think this is I would have loved to have been around in that time to have felt the awe at hearing electric guitar, because it must have literally been electrifying, because we've grown up hearing electric guitar. It's some of the first music I ever heard had electric guitar in it. But if you're 17, 18, 19, and suddenly all you've heard is organs, brass, woodwind, piano, acoustic guitar, nylon guitar, and suddenly you're 18, 19, and someone plays you an electric guitar, it must have blown your mind. And I think we've kind of normalized that a little bit now.
I didn't have that full experience, right? Obviously, I grew up hearing electric guitar all over the place, but growing up in a largely country music-based household. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely some ripping electric Telecaster solos in a lot of that stuff. But hearing a down-tuned like metal riff for the first time that definitely awoken something in my brain. I was like, this is
absolutely,
that's a guitar. I didn't know guitar could do that. And imagining what that was like, hearing Link Ray is a bigger departure even than what I'm talking about, from, nylon string or big band stuff to Link Ray. It's like, whoa, that does kind of sound dangerous. What is he doing there?
Yeah. I mean, Alan Freed was Public Enemy #1 for decades, wasn't he? He was the big rock and roll DJ back in the day, and he was playing all the rock and roll tunes and people were going wild, listening to the radio, going literally crazy, hearing Elvis for the first time and Bill Haley, and the establishment didn't like it.
They did not like it.
It was going to lead to punk,
And it did. They were kind of right in some ways.
Well, there is that. Yeah, but who needs to be told what's right and wrong?
That's right. I'm for it. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad they were kind of right about it, and I'm glad it happened. We needed it. Absolutely. Well, man, I think we've officially gotten close to the end of the main episode, and I've asked you the classic questions before, but I do have one question I'd like to wrap this up on. But before I do, again, the floor is yours to plug anything you want to plug, shout out anybody you want to shout out, or say anything you want to say to a few thousand people right now.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Well, first of all, if you're interested in my pedals, join the mailing list. That's how I get the information out to everybody about when the next batch of pedals I'm building is going to drop. They do go quickly, so you need to be on the mailing list really to know. So go to www.reeveselectro.co.uk and all the information is there. There'll be a pop-up when you get there. Just fill your name in, literally your name, email, off it goes. Secondly to that, as I mentioned earlier, around about the 17th of April, I'll be doing kind of a crowdfunder to put some money into a new workshop. I'm desperately in need of a new workspace. Timing is going to be a little bit essential, so that may shift by a week, depending on when we exactly get the keys. But I don't want to say to people, buy all these pedals when I haven't got the keys. I want to have the keys before I say, come on guys, let's do this. And there'll be lots of perks available as well. So you can get a shout out on the Monday Minute. You can, if you buy a pedal, you can get a time lapse of the build with a personal message. I'll also be doing experience days later on down the line when the new workshop is finished, so you can come along and build a fuzz pedal with me. Very limited spaces for those, and all the pedals on that day that are sold will be built in the new. They'll be the first pedals to be built in the new workshop. So you'll get a free T-shirt to say that you helped fund the workshop 2.0. So yeah, that's my news today. Blake, thank you so much for having me on the show. I love the Tone Mob, and yeah, it's an honour to be asked to come on.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Well, thanks for taking the time, and I wish you good luck in the move and all that jazz. I know that's a stressful time. Oh, and a werewolf.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was well timed.
The blink doorbell.
That's
Sorry, I didn't find a group.
That's my Alexa.
Blink doorbell.
That was well timed. So,
that was perfect timing.
Yeah.
I'm leaving that in. That's hilarious.
That's our Indian food probably just arriving. So but that's good.
Well,
so after the Patreon, I'll be getting stuck straight into that. So
well, that's beautiful. So that does lead into the last question I wanted to ask, since it's we already talked pizza, but the UK gets a lot of flack for its cuisine, or in some people's estimation, lack thereof. But I know that I very much enjoy some British food. I've been over there before, and we have some decent representatives of the style here in town. But what would you say is like an underrated piece of British cuisine that most people overlook?
I would actually say fish and chips. Proper fish and chips.
Done right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. With the real nice, fresh cod and a really crispy batter. And properly done chips. There's nothing like it. It's so good. Delicacy. Yeah, it is good.
Yep. And I have to reiterate to the Americans, you can't go to Applebee's and have this experience. Like it's a place and time situation. I'm really spoiled. I have 2 excellent options very nearby.
Brilliant.
That competes with the things in the UK. And I gotta say, a lot of Americans are afraid of it, but you gotta do a little drop of malt vinegar on it here and there. It really takes it over the top. Yeah,
I mean, I think American food is very really flavorful, and it's like, if you're going to get a hot dog, you want a world on it, basically.
Right. Sometimes
chili dog, you want the pickles, you want your cheese, you want your the everything. I think fish and chips is kind of geared back a little bit, and it kind of seems like that could be really bland. But there's just something about it. All those flavors just work perfectly together. So
yes,
yeah, and it's generally a coastal thing in the UK. So you go to coastal resorts, and that's where I suppose traditionally, because the fresh fish always came in at the coast. So that's making me hungry now. That is fish and chips. But I've got Indian food coming. So who can't really.
You can't argue with that. No. Well, Markus, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll go ahead and wrap this up and slide over to Patreon if that works for you.
Yeah, and we get really deep in the weeds.
We'll do something weird for sure. That's what we do. All right, everybody. For Markus, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Alrighty, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really, truly do. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you. And if you need more, of course, there is more over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/tonemob, where for $5 a month, you will not only get access to the ad-free feeds, you will also get more content. That's right, more content beamed right to your ears, and you actively help keep this thing on the internet airwaves. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Make sure you go check out Markus's stuff. The links are below in the show notes or above or whatever. Depends on where you're listening to this. Whatever player you personally use to listen to this podcast, it's in those text places. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out. I will talk to you on the internet very, very soon. Later. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Chris Swinney, formerly of the Ataris and currently host of That One Time on Tour, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Have you ever wondered what it's really like on the road? The highs can be euphoric, but the lows can be crushing. Join me every week as I chat with industry pros about what it's like living out their wildest dream and, in some cases, their worst nightmare. Past guests of the show include members of NoFX, Pennywise, Bad Religion, and more. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hi, this is Paul Phelps.
And this is Monica Strutt.
And we're from the Daily Music Business Podcast. We're joined by a number of other really great hosts in creating daily content with great advice for independent musicians just like you.
That's right. We put out episodes daily on all topics from music marketing to branding, advice on signing with a manager and label, and anything else you need to up-level the business side of your music career. We've got it covered.
Subscribe to the Daily Music Business Podcast today on your favorite podcast catcher.
Subscribe today to the Daily Music Business Podcast on your favorite podcast platform.